Good evening, friends, and welcome to the Cold War Prepper on this Monday evening. And it was quite a hectic and busy one, too. Hello, Little Lone Prepper. Welcome. Good evening. So a little bit of confusion. No, a lot of confusion. And it's probably all my fault. I apologize for that. But for those of you who are here, welcome, welcome. And if you're watching this on rerun, welcome to you as well. Let me take my shoes off and get settled in here. Tonight was our bi-weekly meeting of St. Vincent de Paul. So I always have something going on Monday nights right before this. So when I don't do that, then ARES, which is the Amateur Radio Emergency Services Club, our group, has their net call on Monday nights as well. So, there's kind of one week I do ARES, the next week I do St. Vincent de Paul. Both of those Monday nights from 7 to 8, a friend of mine, Gil, has his live. Just so much going on. Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much. And then, of course, for some reason, I had a hard time getting it planned on StreamYard, so I put it on directly on YouTube. Had to cancel the YouTube, switch it over to StreamYard, so I may have lost some people there. I apologize for that. Finally have StreamYard all straightened out. So here we are. We're together. I also had planned on having a guest speaker this evening in a discussion. I don't know how, I guess I miscommunicated, but we never did get a confirmation, and so that never did get set up. But I still would like to have her on, and that's have Michelle Mitten. Michelle Mitten, Prepper Veteran is her name, and she is just a phenomenal person. She's an ex-combat medic, and she does a lot of homeopathic stuff. So I would really like to have a great discussion on herbs and essential oils and other natural remedies that are available to us in a post-apocalyptic world. So let me see who all's here. Gosh, we've got 10 people already. So let me see here. Little Lone Prepper was number one. Muskoka Oma, good evening. Sumi, good evening. Sumi sent me a fantastic video of somebody who was using a muffin tin. So it had 6 muffins, spaces for 6 muffins, and they put tea-lit candles down under in each one of those holes, and then they lit the tea light candles, and and there's enough space in there where you can put a frying pan on top of it, and they fixed some scrambled eggs using 6 tea light candles over this muffin tin. Thank you for that, Sumi. I really enjoyed that. That's a great idea, and it's something I think that all of you could use. In an emergency situation, if you had to cook indoors. I think that's a safe way to do that. Jean Sim, good evening. Welcome to you. Let me see who else here. And Utah Mike, good evening. Hill Summit Homestead, Jack, good day to you, all the way from Australia. And let me see who else. Robin in Virginia, good evening. Welcome. And so anyhow, so what I want to do is I would like to talk a little bit about the precarious situation that the world is in, and I want to talk a little bit about hopefully giving you some hope. Today, I think, let me check my notes here. I put out a video. No, it's tomorrow. Tomorrow, you're going to have a short, and the short is called Nuclear Survival. Today, I believe, was herbs and essential oils, and yesterday was foraging. So there's going to be a short coming out at noon tomorrow on nuclear survival. So, we are in precarious times right now. Things are really different. Diana, too, good evening. Good to see you. The threats that are out there, of course, we have what's going on in Europe. That's happening, and that has all potential of escalating. We have the Pacific Rim, China and Taiwan, and the situation that's going on there, and that has very high potential of escalating. We have the Houthis down in Yemen, and what they're doing as far as the Red Sea. We have the pirates in Somalia. We have the Hamas and what's the one up in Jordan? Hezbollah. Hezbollah, and Iran and Syria and gosh, all this stuff is going on, and the possibility of it escalating is just unbelievable. Good evening, Shenanigans. Welcome. Muskoka Oma. She's experiencing my life tonight. So thank you, Muskoka Oma. It's nice to know I'm not the only one. I'm going to have to learn how to dictate on this because every time I hit the space bar on it when I'm texting, I put in an extra B or a C that just doesn't belong there. And so, yeah, my fat thumbs and those small spaces don't work together too well either. So anyhow, what I want to do is I want to kind of just talk about our family and talk about what we can do to make sure that we get through this, because there is hope. The other thing that happened is Friday and then today, the stock market is in rapid decline. And that's not just the U.S. stock market. It's also internationally, the Japanese, the UK, France. All the stock markets are down in anticipation of this global thing that we might have happening. Gold is down, silver is down, the price of oil, unbelievably, is down. Just all the indicators are showing that the world is in a terrible place, and so I want to caution you on a couple of things, and I want to give you some hope on a couple of things. I know people keep talking about that the times are biblical. Well, I want to reassure you, the times have been biblical since 33 AD. And one of the things, I believe it's in John 6, and Peter and no, it's not. It's in John 25 or 21. But anyhow, Peter and Jesus are talking, and Peter says that John, he may want John to hang around until the coming. The parousia is the Greek word that's used there. And that gets misinterpreted by a new faction of people as being, quote, the rapture. So, there was this idea that there was going to be a coming. Parousia is actually a Greek word for coming or appearance. It never says second coming. It says appearance or coming. And that has been mistranslated in 1 Thessalonians 4:13 by a group of people who think that means that people are going to be snatched away from the earth prior to any problems coming. And so I just want to caution you, research that. Don't get caught up in the glamour of it. That was something, that whole theory was actually started by a lady by the name of Margaret MacDonald in the early 1800s. She had a dream while she was suffering from pneumonia, and then a fellow by the name of John Darby decided he could find biblical support for it, and it didn't really find any support at all, any biblical support or any theological support, eschatological support, until about 1970, when a guy by the name of Hal Lindsey wrote a book called The Late Great Planet Earth. And when he wrote the book The Late Great Planet Earth, it kind of became a little bit more mainstay among a lot of the what do you call them? A separate Christian faction. Okay, it didn't really catch a lot of effort until the series, the Left Behind series, came around, and then it gained a lot of traction. So I would encourage you to do a lot of research. I can show you in the Bible, specifically in Matthew 26, where it says only those who persevere until the end will be saved. So I want to reassure you that there is something coming, but it may not be as quick as you think. So be prepared. Okay. Do your due diligence, do your research, and be prepared for that. But there is hope. There's real good hope. Bouger Prepper, hello, how are you? So great to see you. I haven't seen you, gosh, in almost a year. Wow, fantastic to have you back. Yes, and so I mean, if you take a look at the biblical stuff that there is, there's a lot of prophetic stuff that's not good, and there's a lot of stuff that is good. So it all depends on how you interpret it. And but please do me a favor. When you interpret it, don't put it out as being gospel fact. Okay. There are a lot of people, I get really upset watching a lot of other channels when they say the Bible says. No, that's not what the Bible says. The Bible says this, and then you interpret it the way that you're presenting it. So your interpretation is not necessarily what the Bible says. It's your interpretation. Please be specific that is how you interpret it rather than what the Bible says. I'll give you a good example. When it talks about in Daniel, he talks about the armies that will come down with Gog, the prince of Magog. So Gog is a person, Magog is a country, and also the chief prince. And the word chief or principal that's used there is Rosh, like Rosh Hashanah, okay, in the Jewish New Year, the chief day of the year. So there are some translations that did not translate Rosh. So people take that Rosh and they say, that means Russia. And so, people start interpreting this and they come out with very, very, they proclaim things that may not necessarily be true. Okay. So I just encourage you to do your research. One of the things that, people take a quote. Now I'll give you the quote. It's in Matthew 26 and it says wars and rumors of wars. But there's a lot more to it than that. And so I would encourage you to read the whole thing and not just take one thing out of context when you read it, because there's a lot more to it than that. I think I have it tabbed here. And then we're going to get into my personal things here. Just a second. No, it's Matthew 25. I'm sorry. No, it's Matthew 24. There we go. Okay. Let me find my glasses here. And maybe I'm not going to find it. I thought I had it marked. But anyhow, here it is. It's Matthew 24. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for these things must happen, and it will not yet be the end. See, nobody ever reads you that part. They just say wars and rumors of wars to get you kind of nervous and upset. Nation will face against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes from place to place, but all these are only the beginning signs of the labor pains. And then it goes on to say several things after that. And then it says, and this gospel of the kingdom will be preached throughout the world as a witness to all nations before the end will come. So when people start telling you wars and rumors of wars is the end, no, it's not. It's the beginning. Okay. So please don't get caught up in that. Please don't let people get you all worried about that. Let me see who else, if we've got anybody else joining us here. And Vioxerus, good evening. Welcome to you, my friend. Absolutely. Thank you for recommending that, Jack. Pepper Book Club, good evening. Welcome. Good to see you. So that's it. I just want to caution y'all. There are a lot of people out there who are throwing a lot of things out there, trying to who are extremists, let me put it that way. And so I just want to caution you, don't get caught up in it. I mean, I admire your belief, and I think we all need to have faith, but there's also hope, okay? So that's the part I really want to focus on, is what is the hope, and where are we? And so that's tomorrow, that short tomorrow. So let me tell you about my trip, my journey with preparedness, and where I have been and what I have done over the course of the last 50 or 60 years. And so the way I got started in this was, I was a young 10-year-old, and my next door neighbor was the civil defense warden for the block. And he built a cinder block fallout shelter in his backyard. I mean, this was the kind where we had the 12-volt battery and 12-volt lights. We had a manual air induction filtration system where you had basically, I don't know if you've ever been to physical therapy, but they have these things they call the can opener. And it's this pedal you do with either your hands or your feet. Well, he had this bicycle treadle, and then he had this hand pump, and that somebody had to be doing that 24 hours a day to get the air to come into the hut. We didn't have the kind of stuff that we have nowadays. The same thing with the foot pedal. And so if you wanted lights, they were all 12-volt lights off that 12-volt battery. I mean, it was very austere conditions, but I was totally enamored as a young 10-year-old. As I started studying everything about nuclear warfare, started studying everything about prepping, and that's what convinced me to be a prepper. Believe it or not, that was 60 years ago. Thank God. So I've been prepping for 60 years. And so what I want to caution you on is, let's take a look at history, and let's take a look at what you're being fed. And you may not be there's a lot of sensationalism out there around nuclear war, the same as there is sensationalism about religion. Okay. So I want you to hello, Bull Moose. Welcome from Tennessee. Glad to see you. That's the first time I've seen that name. Welcome. We're glad to have you here with us. I just want to share with you some thoughts that I would like for you to ask yourself. And then I'll do a couple things that may be kind of fun for you. X24 Reviews, good evening. Good to see you as well, my friend. So at the ripe young age of 10, I got indoctrinated into prepping via nuclear warfare, the Cold War. And this was primarily in October of 1962 during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And we have that coming about again today with the new fleet that's down in Havana, as well as the submarines that are off our east-west coasts and probably in the Gulf of Mexico. We also have the, what's it called? Where they have the container ships, and they have the intermediate range ballistic missiles that are in the shipping containers, and they can be launched from a shipping container out, even in a port of one of our own ports. There's all kinds of nuclear threats out there. So there are two things you have to be concerned about. Number one is, what is the yield of the burst? And Club K, thank you, Diana, too. And the other one is whether it's a ground burst or an air burst, okay? So if we take a look at the only two times that nuclear warfare has been used, they were to end World War II against Japan. And so that was, of course, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Both of those were air bursts. So what happens is, when you blow the atomic bomb in the altitude so that the actual explosion itself never comes in contact with the Earth, all of that radioactive, the fusion or fission is taking place above the Earth. It minimizes the amount of fallout that happens. You're not irradiating that much of the soil because all the radioactivity is happening up here. Now, it maximizes the blast effect, okay? So that you're going to have a lot more force of a bomb coming down and destroying the area that's directly underneath of it, okay? On the other hand, if you have a surface burst, that's for things that may be subterranean, okay? They'll probably use a surface burst against our Minuteman silos, or against Cheyenne Mountain, or against Camp David, something like that. But they aren't going to use ground bursts everywhere, because what is it that they want from us? We are one of the richest nations as far as soil, as far as productivity. So they don't want to irradiate that. They want to take that. So they're going to use an air burst so that they don't get that irradiation effect into the soil. When you have a surface burst, now that soil becomes part of that radioactive process, and that's what irradiates it, makes it become radioactive. Then the heat of that explosion throws it up into the air, and as it cools, it comes down in a plume as the wind spreads it, and that's what we call fallout. Fallout with an air burst is minimum. There is some, but it's minimum, okay? then the fallout from a ground or surface burst is rather large. And that's the one that we were preparing for during the Cuban Missile Crisis, thinking that they would just want to use nothing but ground bursts. So, one of the things we want to do is we want to make sure that we're prepared for both. But my personal opinion is, if I were the person who were doing it, I would want the rich soil. I would want the farmland. I would want the corn, the wheat, the cattle, and everything else. So I would use an air burst rather than a surface burst. Okay. And so we would have the same thing as Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where less than 25% of the population was killed. 75% survived. Okay. Now, there was a portion of that, 5 to 10%, that had extreme radioactive. You've got 3 rays that come out from an explosion. You've got alpha, beta, and gamma. So the alpha rays basically can be stopped by your clothing. Okay, so can the beta rays. You don't want to inhale any of that or get it inside of you. The gamma is what's going to do the damage. And that's what penetrates through things. But there's what they call the law of inverse squares. Okay, so what I want you to think of is think of a flashlight. Okay. So you've got a flashlight, you've got a certain amount of light that's coming out of the tip. And as you shine it at something, that light spreads out, right? So as it spreads out, it becomes dimmer and dimmer. And as it goes further and further away from the flashlight, it becomes dimmer and dimmer, okay? Because it's being dissipated. So the same thing with radioactivity. If you're up close, right here, right, you've got this full amount, but that's actually like this. So it's starting to spread out. So that as you are further away from the explosion, those radioactive particles, some of them are going to miss you, and only a portion of them are going to hit you. And that's called the law of inverse squares. So if you are let's say you're 1 meter away from the explosion and survive it, okay? If you're 2 meters away, then you're only going to get 1/2 square, 1/4 of the radioactivity that you would have at 1 meter. And then it goes again. If you're 3 meters away, you're going to get 1/9 of what you would get at 1 meter away. So that's that inverse square, is because it's not only going this way that it's dissipating, but it's also going this way that it's dissipating. So you're not going to get that much radiation. Now you will get some. Okay, I don't want to paint a totally rosy picture here. You'll get some. But the further away you are from it, the better off you are. If you've got something between you and the explosion, you're pretty good off too. A general rule of thumb. Oh, there's Michelle Mitten. Okay, great. So can we reschedule, or do you want to come on tonight? I can give you a link if you want to come on and do what we were going to do tonight. You tell me which way you want to go. So one of the rules of thumb is, well, that's a really terrible pun, isn't it? If you can stick your thumb up, okay, at arm's length away from you, and look at the mushroom cloud, if your thumb completely covers the mushroom cloud, then you are pretty safe from either the force of the blast or from any immediate radioactive material, gamma radiation coming to you, okay? Now, you might still want to take cover for a minute or two, but the other thing you want to do is you can count. So if you see, let's say off to the side, you see a sudden burst of light, okay? And you can do this with anything. You can do this with a cannon. You can do it with a rifle or anything else. If you can count the time between the flash and the time you hear the bang. So it's called flash bang. So you're going to see the flash, then go 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. Then you hear the noise, 3, 1,000. Fantastic. Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that. So if you can count to 3 1,000s, that means that whatever the difference between the speed of light and the speed of sound was 3 seconds. So that means you multiply it by 1,000, and that's how many meters away the explosion was. So if you have 3 seconds between flash and bang, you've got 3,000 meters, 3 kilometers. That explosion was about 1.8 or 2 miles away from you. Okay, so that gives you an idea of how far away you are from the actual event. So that will help you an awful lot. And But remember, you want to duck and cover, okay? And you want to get past that first initial outburst of the explosion. So if you can survive that, your chances of surviving are phenomenal, okay? Now, I want to go, let me get here to nuke map. We'll do a couple just fun things here. And I want to show you a couple differences. So one of the things that I do want to caution you on as well is not every military base is a target, okay? I will tell you that Fort Hood, now Fort Cavazos, is an hour drive from me, okay? It has an armored division there. Now, in a strategic world, that armored division is nothing. That armored division is not going to do anything as far as defending against the Russian nuclear attack. It's not going to be able to transport overseas to defend this. It is static. It is lost. If you take out the port or the airport that would have transported them, you have done the same thing as destroying that entire fort, okay? So but you can stop a lot of other things by taking out the port or the airport. So you look for a lot better targets than a static Army division. Not every Air Force base is a target. I can tell you that San Antonio, Lackland Air Force Base, which does the basic training for the Air Force, is not a strategic target. It's probably not going to receive a nuke if they have limited number of nukes to hit. So you have to kind of take a look at what is there around you. And so what I want to do now is there's this site, and it's called Nuke Maps by Alex Wellerstein. This guy is a genius. Make sure you support him and go to his blog so that you can read what he does about nuclear stuff on a regular basis. And then so this is Nuke Map, okay? So I'm going to go to the Nuke Map itself, and I'm going to say, okay, Cheyenne Mountain, Wyoming. No, let me do somewhere else. Let's do Washington, D.C., okay? So I'm going to put in here Washington, D.C., and we're going to go to Washington, D.C. Right now it's centered over Manhattan. So now we're basically over the Capitol, okay? So this is the Jefferson Memorial is right over here. Pentagon is over here. And so now we're going to say, okay, what do we want for a warhead yield? Well, we're not going to take the largest because that has to be delivered by an aircraft, and that's the Tsar Bomba. So we're going to look for the largest actual rocket that they have. And so the largest ICBM that they have is, let's see if we can find the Dongfeng. There we go. The Dongfeng Chinese rocket. Okay, that's 3,300 kilotons. Okay, so right now we're going to do an air burst. Okay, so we want to look for casualties and we want to look for radioactive fallout. Okay, so I'm going to click those two buttons and we're going to detonate it. Now, so what we see now is this is going to give us an idea of how much the largest missile that the Chinese have, which is actually larger than what the Russians have, would do as far as damages. So we need to come down here and take a look at these things. So the fireball radius is going to be this dark yellow spot right in here. So basically the area of the mall itself. So it'll take out the Capitol, the Pentagon, the White House, the Supreme Court, the Library of Congress, but not that much more. You're going to have moderate blast damage out to 5 miles or 5 PSIs for out to about 10.5 kilometers, which is about 6 miles. So that's going to go out as far as College Park, where I graduated from, the University of Maryland. And so then the next one is you're going to have thermal radiation. So people who are out exposed, standing outside, will receive up to 3rd-degree burns on any portion of their skin that's exposed, okay, when that fireball goes off. If you are looking at the fireball anywhere within any of these circles, you will be permanently blinded, okay? And then you've got the light blast damage, which is 1 psi out here all the way to Laurel and Bowie. So if they launch it here, here's Laurel, here's the Baltimore-Washington Parkway, here's Odenton, this is Fort Meade. NSA is right there on that corner. So NSA is safe from any bombs that happen over Washington, D.C. So that's using an airburst. Now I want you to pay attention, and I'm going to come down, whoops, this mouse. I should show you where I lived in Laurel. Now, we're going to go back up here, and let me click on this and make sure I do that right. Now I'm going to show you the difference between an air burst and a ground burst. So we're going to go up here. We're going to switch from air burst to ground burst. Everything's going to stay exactly the same. I'm going to show you the detonation. So now, if you notice, the estimated fatalities are going to double. Okay, we've got 684,000 fatalities and 668,000 injuries. Okay. So this is your fireball radius. Notice that it's a little bit larger than it was for the airburst, okay? You've got the radiation radius for the initial gamma, alpha, beta, gamma, out to here. Then you've got your heavy blast damage. Notice it's not quite as large as the airburst. That's the advantage of the airburst, is it has a larger blast damage area, so it's going to destroy more buildings and everything than a ground burst. But the advantage to the ground burst is look at the contamination that you're going to get, okay? So this is your moderate blast damage here, and then we're going to come over here, and we get here. This is your thermal radiation damage. So these are people who are going to be exposed to radiation, okay? So now we've got our fallout shelf contours, okay? So this is for a 3.3 megaton surface burst with 50% fission and 24 kilometer per hour winds, predominantly, and this is based off of history, heading northeast. So remember, College Park was just inside that 1 psi damage. Look at the concentration of fallout now. And so I'm going to have to take this down to a smaller scale. So if we look now, see how the fallout is coming over Baltimore and heading up northeast. And you've also got these other plumes coming out to the side. So this is the light yellow is 1 rad per hour. The darker yellow, almost orange, is 10 rads per hour. This dark orange here is 100 rads per hour. And then this red plume right here is going to be 1,000 rads per hour. So these people in here are definitely going to have to take shelter and probably be sheltered for up to at minimum of 3 days, most likely 2 weeks. These people here, we're probably going to have to be sheltered for a minimum of 3 days, minimum 1 day, and probably somewhere around a week. These people don't have to have that much sheltering as much as stay indoors and away from the actual fallout. So I wanted to give you an idea of that. And we'll do a couple of your play around plays, but I want to catch up with, I'm sure I've lost a lot of great comments in chat. So I want to catch up there and make sure that I'm good so that I don't lose anything. Hello, X24 Reviews. Good evening. So let me catch up here. So yes, prepper for the ages, that's correct. 1 over r squared, and r is range. So, and that's called the law of the inverse squares. Let me see what I've got. So Jack says the rule of thumb. Yep, great. That's a tough question, Little Lone Prepper. That's a very tough question. I think they can do damage without taking out the power plants, because remember, actually a power plant, a nuclear meltdown in a power plant will do more long-term damage than will a nuclear fission or fusion explosion. So I would be more afraid of, let's say, a 3 Mile Island incident than I would be of an actual missile landing over me. So a combination of the two would be devastating. It would absolutely be devastating. You're right. So you're basically taking a nuclear bomb and creating an even bigger dirty bomb with a nuclear bomb. So that's a new term we're going to introduce here that I want to share with you. So you have nuclear radiation from a fission or fusion material. So you have this bomb on a rocket, and what you're doing is you're causing a nuclear radioactive event with that. And so that radiation then is what causes the explosion and causes everything to be destroyed. On the other hand, when you have a dirty bomb, you're taking radioactive materials. Let's say you've got an old nuclear power plant, and you've got what they call expelled radioactive rods. Okay, those rods are down to only 10% of what they were originally. So now they aren't producing as much radioactivity. They aren't boiling water as efficiently. So they put them in a containment pond. Okay, and they're just stored there until they actually go dormant, which can take a couple thousand years. So you take those rods, you take them out of that water, you wrap them around something that is explosive. So you're not using them for the explosion, you're using something else. So you can take, let's say, a van full of ammonium nitrate, and that becomes your explosion material. Then you take that radioactive material and surround that van with it, so that what you're doing is when the explosion happens, you're taking the radioactive material and throwing that out. Okay, so that's all becomes fallout. Okay, there is no radioactive explosion. The explosion itself is basically a chemical reaction, but you're throwing all that radioactive material out and irradiating the area around it. That's a dirty bomb. So what you're basically doing is, if you're using a nuclear missile to land on a power plant, you're creating a nuclear dirty bomb, if that makes sense. Okay. So that would be terrible, terrible. Okay, let me see. Jack says that military bases in Slovenia probably aren't strategic primary targets. Probably. Yeah, that's true. Let me see what else So what the funny thing is, we do have the largest nuclear power plant in the world is actually in Zaporizhia, which is right there on the Don River. And so you've got two things right there together, and they provide so much of the electrical power for Europe. You have the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, ZNPP, and then you also have the Zaporizhia hydroelectric plant, which is a dam on the river. So, and that provides a lot of the hydroelectric power. So you've got both of those. Both of those so far have been in the fighting there in the Ukraine-Russia area, but neither one has really been targeted for anything. So, although I have a friend and her daughter still lives in Zaporizhia, she's from Zaporizhia, and we just had dinner with them about a month ago. We were talking about it, and the people in Zaporizhia have not had power now for almost a year and a half, even though both power plants are producing power. They're not being sent to the Zaporizhia area itself. So NC Farmer, North Carolina Farmer says The Attack by Kurt Schlichter is a good book for preparing. I'll have to write that down. That's a new one for me. Don't forget that we are doing, in my opinion, one of the better books on the subject, and that is James Wesley Rawles' book, How to Survive the End of the World as We Know It. This is 2009 edition, but it's a great book. He also has a great blog, and so I strongly recommend that. Attack. Kurt Schlichter. Okay. So I forget where I was. Oh, we were talking about the difference between a nuclear explosion and a dirty bomb. I personally believe that we probably will not have any nuclear attacks on the United States. My personal opinion. Okay, so take this for what it's worth. and I'm not going to qualify that with saying I'm an expert in anything. I'm just going to say this is my personal opinion based on my beliefs. Okay. I think, number one, they can do it through either an EMP, which does not destroy anything other than electronic components. And so that's the cleanest way to do what they want to accomplish. But yet, it's still going to have a major effect on the destruction of human life as possible. Because remember, we talked about Holleran's book, and he told Congress that because of our dependency on electricity, and as far away as we are from, gosh, it was just about 100 years ago that we had the Rural Electrification Act of 1933. So, we're 9 years short of 100 years. 100 years ago, only 12% of the United States, 10 to 12% of the United States was electrified. So the difference between rural America in World War II and now is just unbelievable. My grandmother, the farm that my grandmother had, no running water. We had an outhouse. We didn't have a sewage system inside the house. And when she and I played parcheesi at night, or combat war with cards or anything like that, we did it with an oil lamp. So, I mean, we are not that far removed away from primitive living. But the people in today's society have no idea what that is like. Okay. And so I think that the difference between having electricity now and not having it is going to be substantial, and it's going to cause a lot of people to die, as well as our dependency upon electrical things for dialysis, oxygen, CPAP, everything else. That's going to be devastating, and that can cause a lot of damage. The other thing is, I am certain there are sleeper cells in our country just waiting to be activated. If you take out 7 of the major transformers in any one of our 3 grid systems, it's basically going to cause a power failure throughout the entire country. I think there are probably enough sleeper cells to do that. If, on the other hand, we have these 30 to 80,000 Chinese who have crossed the borders in the last 3 years, military age, single, unaccompanied, good physical conditioning, well-dressed and groomed, that don't look like they're refugees, but they've been allowed into the country, that's the equivalent to about 5 divisions of infantry that are inside our country. People who are claiming asylum, but they look like they could be military from a foreign country, an oppositional country. I would say that's something of more concern to me than being attacked with a nuclear weapon. So I think we're going to see something other than nuclear blasts inside the United States. Now, will it happen in Europe? Will it happen in the Middle East? Probably. It could be. I want to hold the highest esteem here and say, that's not the right word either. I want to be as optimistic as possible and say, I don't think that we are stupid enough to do what a lot of people have told us that they're projecting that we're going to see. I think it's survivable. I think there is hope for all of us. I think if you do some basic study, you understand how to, number one, I did a video and I'll do it again. I'll resubmit it here. I spent less than $10 and I built a personal protective equipment bag. And there's one for each seat in both Helen's car and my pickup. And it's basically a $1 disposable poncho that you can get from any dollar store. It's got a bandana. It's got some tight fitting goggles, an N95 mask, or you can use a surgical mask, some plastic gloves, Kydex gloves, or what are they called? And then I bought some painter's booties from one of the hardware stores. So now you've got your shoes covered, the poncho's covering the vast majority of your body. You've got your poncho, you've got the bandana tied so that it's down tight. You've got your mask so you're not breathing in any of the radioactive particles. You've got goggles on so it's not getting into your eyes. Of course, your ears are covered by the hood. So you've got your body entirely covered. Now, if any radioactive fallout falls on you, You'll still get the results of the radiation, but what you want to do is you want to remove that radioactive material as soon as possible. So you get back home. Now you can take that off, you can doff that, and all of that radioactive material goes somewhere else so that you can now go inside your area without carrying any radioactive fallout with you. Now, I've gone a little bit more extreme. I just recently did a video on a camp shower. So my backyard, my back porch right here is a small square. And so I have some, what do you call them? Thick tarps that I can hang. And I've got it all set up where I can hang those tarps so that I come in, hang my tarps so that no other radioactive fallout gets into that area. I have my bag hanging from an eye hook in the beam. And so now I can take a shower after I've taken off my radioactive or my fallout contaminated particles or articles of protection, put them in a trash can, and then I can shower off any possible residual radioactive fallout. And then I'll be naked, but I'll come into the house clean and not bringing any radioactive fallout into the house with me. So I would strongly consider doing that. It's going to cost you maybe less than $10 to get yourself your own PPE. And that's going to be, I'll go through that list once again, a cheap disposable poncho, a bandana, or something to hold it down tight on your head, rubber band, one of those scarf things that, or a sweatband or something like that. Just something so that holds the hood of the poncho down tight on your face. A set of goggles that are fairly tight fitting, a mask that can be either surgical or it can be an N95 mask. Then you're going to want to have gloves so it's not getting into your hands. And then you also want to have those painter's booties to cover your shoes so you don't get a whole bunch of dust on those. That is a very simple set of PPE that you can use. So, well, thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that. Yes, and so probably think of it this way. Jack's extremely right. When we use nuclear weapons, we use nuclear weapons against strategic targets, not against operational or tactical targets. Okay, so a strategic target is one that basically says, can it either diminish my strike, which is like what Jack's talking about, a radar that tells you exactly where they're going to hit. You want to take that out because you want the enemy to be blinded so that they don't know where you're hitting, right? Or you want to take out any means that they have to either knock down your attack or once your attack is over to immediately respond to your attack. So that when we talk about strategic targets, those are the things that we're primarily talking about, okay? So an infantry division, an armored division, a fighter base, a supply depot, those are not strategic targets, okay? Communications nodes, radar nodes, missile nodes, those are all targets, as well as leadership, command and control. So DC, of course, Cheyenne Mountain, things like that, okay? Hello, KP Heathen. Welcome. Good evening. None of us are as prepared as we would like to be, but we can get better prepared than what we currently are. Hello, Vision Preparedness. Good evening. Good to see you. Let me see. There and Michelle, I would not say that there's anything different there than the panic that may exist among other abled people. Okay, that there are people. Remember that Johari's window. Johari's window says that there are things we know about ourselves and things we don't know about ourselves, and there are things that other people know about us and don't know about us, and so I don't know how I will react in a case like this. I would like to think that I've got enough preparation, I have enough training, I have enough fortitude to where I don't go into a panic mode. But I don't know. I've never been put in that situation before. But even in combat, and Michelle, you know this, in a combat situation, a hero today can be a coward tomorrow. And a coward today can be a hero tomorrow. It's all on how we adapt to the situation around us and how we perceive it at that particular moment, and how we react to it. Sometimes the training kicks in and sometimes fear kicks in. But that's going to be transient. Somebody who's a hero yesterday is not necessarily guaranteed to be a hero today. It's just, how things work out in life. So that can be different depending upon each person. So I would say that that's no different, not that much more different than either you or I, and how we were going to handle the situation. Absolutely, Sumi. You're absolutely correct. Just think of the blackout that happened in the Pacific Northeast. I'm not Pacific, in the Atlantic Northeast, that took out parts of Canada and the entire Northeast for almost 2 weeks, a while back. Over time, you told Mike. Over time, I believe that an EMP would have a more devastating effect than a full missile attack, simply because of the and even a full missile attack, probably if it hits some of those nodes, some of those routing stations, then it can have basically some of the same effects as an EMP. But straight out, I would say that an EMP within a year would have more devastating attack value than a nuclear attack would initially. Okay. We're dependent on modern conveniences that will not make it a week with a major hit to company. Yeah, so think of all the things you can do to mitigate the things that are, do some of the things you can to mitigate some of the mental distress that the situation is going to cause. Part of that is preparation, okay? And part of that is just awareness, training, and being able to react and making it habitual, okay? So I think that that's going to be critical. And so, yes, is it going to be more difficult to train and prepare? And this is the problem I foresee when you have other abled people, is the training portion of it, because there is a possibility of a perception that because you're preparing for it, that it is imminent and may cause them additional stress. So how you prepare them for it is the most difficult portion. I think that preparing them for it is going to be far more difficult than actually living through it. Does that make sense? So let me see. I think I'm getting close to catching up. Storms, Radios, and Cats, good evening. Welcome. Gosh, I think I'm getting close to the end. So, yeah, I am convinced. I am convinced that with a little bit of proactivity on your part, that if it does go nuclear, we can survive it. I mean, even here, let me redo this. Let me show you where I am. Okay, give you a basic idea. Get rid of, clear all that. I want to go back to nuke map here. So we're going to go up here. Oh, I did the wrong thing here. I want to come over here, and I want to take this one, and I want to go to Austin. Okay, so, and I'll show you basically where I am. So we're going to go Austin, Texas. Okay, so here's Austin, Texas, with the same ding fang Largest nuclear rocket that the Chinese have right now. And let me get the scale right here. Oh, come on, scale, work with me. So here's Round Rock up here. Okay. I'm in that very minimal 1 rad area up here in Round Rock. Okay. My best friend lives over here in Cedar Park. Notice he's totally out of it. And this is if it goes off over the capital, the state capital. Okay. Now let's move this map a little bit here. Okay. And let's move this, say what happens if it comes up over here. So here's Lampasas, there's Copper's Cove. See all this gray area right here? That's Fort Hood. Okay, here's Colleen, here's Copper's Cove. Fort Hood is in between, so this whole gray area here, all this gray area here is Fort Hood. Okay, this is all range out in here. But the actual Fort Hood proper is right in here. This is West Fort Hood, which is where they have the air base, the longest runway and everything else. So if we take that marker, okay, and this is a ground burst that I'm showing here. So let's take this marker and let's move it up here. And we're going to put it right over the main post at Fort Hood. Look, I'm totally out of it. So if they go for Fort Hood, I'm out of it because the prevailing winds go to the northeast. Now I've said it several times, and I'll mention it one more time today. One of the things that you want to do is here, this is projecting prevailing winds, historical prevailing winds. There is another site that's really fantastic, and it's called windy.com, windy.com. Every morning I check it, see what the prevailing winds are. Because remember, this is based off of historical prevailing winds. So if the prevailing winds are actually heading due north, or in this case, let's say they're heading due south, then that means that this is coming due south towards Round Rock, this plume, instead of heading northeast. Okay, but I'll give you the let me give you the website for this so that you can play with it. Okay, there we go. We'll come back here. So here is the link for that website, so you can play with that tool and see what's going to happen as far as a nuclear explosion in and around your area. Don't do it on top of you. You're not a target. Chances are you're not a target. Do it on top of a strategic target that's close to you. If you know that there is a nuclear silo, or you know there's a command and control bunker or something like that close to you, put it over that. If you are close to a major population center, I'm going to say one of the 10 largest cities, probably a target. If you are, what else? Yeah, I would say, and just a rinky-dink Air Force base or a rinky-dink Army post, don't worry about it. Fort Rucker, Alabama, okay, where they teach helicopter pilots, not a strategic target. Okay, Fort Huachuca, Arizona, where we teach military intelligence, not a target. Fort Bliss, Texas, home of the first Cav, is it first Cav or first Armored? Not a target. Okay, those are all static combat units. They're not targets. Okay, not strategic targets. North Carolina farmer says that they love the Windy app. Great. Let me see here. My parents used to live in Copper's Cove, but they moved down here to Round Rock, back in the early 80s. So, JK Adventures, good day, welcome. Yeah, I agree, and I'm afraid of, regardless who wins the election, there's going to be opposition to it. Like what's going on right now in Great Britain. God, that's crazy. The extreme conservatives are really upset with the British government for allowing so many Muslims into the country, and so the Muslims and the extreme rightists are going at it. They've declared a state of emergency. Evidently, there's been like 16 or 18 towns have major riots and burnings and fires and everything else. It looks like there's almost a small revolution going on there. We've got problems in Venezuela. And of course the election that just happened there. The world is going crazy, people, and so I want you to be educated, and I want you to have a sense of urgency But I also want you to have a sense of hope, that just because it's happening doesn't mean that it's the end of it for you. We can get through this together. So I would say, continue on with your plans. Focus, get that PPE kit that I told you about so you can get rid of any of the fallout if there's any on you. Yeah, that's a $10 investment that I think is going to be very worthwhile. Make sure you're stocking up on your water. Make sure you're stocking up on your food supplies. And right now, I probably would not be spending too much money on freeze-dried and dehydrated. Canned goods and spaghetti and pasta sauce and rice and chili and things like that you can cook indoors that are going to last you through this period. I think that's going to be more important than getting a whole bunch of expensive. And I sell it. I've been a distributor with Thrive Life since 2009. So I've got 15 years selling freeze-dried foods. I'm an affiliate with Nutrient Survival, some of the best freeze-dried food on the planet. I'm going to tell you right now, if you have a limited income, just go to Walmart, get some soups, get some rice, get a can of Campbell's chili mac, right? The pre-made chili mac. Get those kinds of things. That's going to be far more beneficial to you than investing a whole bunch of money and getting very little relative in the freeze-dried and dried and dehydrated stuff. So I hope this has been oh gosh, shenanigans. Thank you. Yes, Bangladesh is having their problems as well. I hope I provided you with a little bit of hope, a little bit to think about. Don't succumb to all the negativity. Please don't succumb to all the negativity. We can get through this together, and it is something that we will endure together. Matthew 31. Or is it 26:31? Let me see here. I think I have it. See here. Let me see. No, I'm not going to find it for you real quick, but basically it says that the ones who persevere are the ones who will last. And so anyhow, we can persevere. We can last. We got this. We're going to do this together. So with that, I would like to remind you that tomorrow we're going to talk about getting out of Dodge, bugging out. I'm not a big bug out fan. It's in the book. It's the next chapter we're going to discuss. So we're going to discuss it next. And, so I'd like to close this evening, of course, with my favorite Numbers chapter 6. Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy 6, verses 24, 25, 26. Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and give you peace. So remember, we're all in this together. We need to support each other. Thank you for being so kind, polite, and respectful to each other. We are in this together. We need to support each other. We need to lift each other up. We need to give each other hope. Just being there and helping each other, providing the emotional support, providing the hope, providing your experience and what you've learned and sharing that with the other people in chat is exactly what we need in order to get through this together, because togetherness is the key. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate you being here. I will see you tomorrow night at 8:00 when we talk about bugging out. Take care, everybody. Thanks for being here. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.